and welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group bi-weekly meeting. It is June 22nd, 2017, and we're going to have a good meeting for you today. We've got a couple of cool demos as well as a great community demo, so looking forward to having a look at those. But first, for folks that might be new on the call, we always like to review what this is about. So we are a subset of the larger SharePoint Patterns and Practices program focused on SharePoint Framework and client-side development. And mute. Please do remember to stay on mute. Thank you. And so we're focused on SharePoint Framework and client-side development and the JavaScript core library that we've put together here in the Patterns and Practices group. And so this is a venue for folks that are very interested in those types of endeavors, so the client-side development and SharePoint Framework, to have a place to have a little bit more focused conversation, as we found that the general monthly meeting was just getting too big, and it was hard to sort of focus on these topics that were coming up. So we started a special interest group, and we meet twice a week, and we will continue that into the next, when I say next year, at Microsoft, our fiscal year ends at the end of June. So we are, we'll have to reset the invitation will end, actually, this is the last session on that calendar invite. We will get that reset and sent back out to folks. The same link will work. We'll just update the file at that link. We have not done that yet, but we will. And I'll be on Twitter and post when that happens. But the next meeting will be in 2 weeks as normal. We do have two links down there at the bottom. aka SPFx community takes you to the Microsoft Tech community, and the dev.office.com/SharePoint is your one-stop shop for all things SharePoint development. Whether you want to get into the new SharePoint framework stuff, or if you are interested in add-in development, or if you're interested in the full trust code WSP development, that is where we're moving all our resources for SharePoint development. So do check that out, and as well check out the community to get involved with your peers and ask questions and get feedback and things like that. So moving right along, what is our agenda for today? We're going to do a quick update on the JavaScript core component, including some amazing growth numbers I want to talk about very quickly. Vase has got a great update on SharePoint Framework as well as a short demo. And then we got demos. Like I said, Vase has got a quick demo. We've got a demo from Velen Georgiev. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too badly. He's got an SPFx sample he's been working on, which I'm excited to see. And then I'll have a short demo on what I'm working on in terms of the graph inside the JavaScript core library. It's a very early look, but I want to show that to folks really with the idea of getting feedback. Since it's very early days, so we have an opportunity to kind of craft how that's going to work before it's built out and sort of more set in stone and harder to change. And then we should have maybe a little time at the end for some open discussion, but we'll see how we do. So as always, I want to mention opportunities if you're new to participate in the Patterns and Practices program or this special interest group. We do encourage you in the community, if you would like to do a demo on this call, please reach out. Those demos can be anything to do with SharePoint Framework, web parts, or the new SharePoint Framework extension work that's come out very recently. That Vase is going to talk about. He talked about on the last call, and I think we'll talk about a little bit more on this call. If you have anything involving the JavaScript core library, so that could be something in Node that might not necessarily be inside SharePoint Framework. We've had some really cool demos around that. You can also contribute on GitHub. So contribute on GitHub, you can submit issues, give us feedback, feature ideas. You can also contribute pull requests. So we always appreciate folks from the community either adding some functionality or perhaps fixing a bug they might find in the code. And then provide feedback. So your channels to provide feedback are this call. You can Twitter at it, tweet at us, I suppose, on Twitter, and you can use the Gitter channel as well as the Microsoft Tech community are all great ways to give us feedback. And we do try and keep up with all that feedback, though I will admit it's a lot to keep track of at this point. So if you feel like you're not getting an answer or that we're sort of ignoring you, it's go ahead and tag us in the question. We'll sometimes help bring that to our attention. So don't think we're trying to ignore you or avoid you. It might just be that we missed your question, for which we apologize, but just kind of give us a little reminder and we'll do our best to help you out. So a quick update on the JavaScript core component. So latest update, 2.06 was released on Monday, the 12th. So if you haven't upgraded, please do give that a shot. Not a ton of changes in there, but a little bit of added functionality as well as some bug fixes from issues folks had reported. So do give that a shot and let us know, of course, any feedback or issues you might see with that. I have started working on the graph support, so we had a great thread going there's an issue in the issues list that we're using as that thread, and so we are going to sort of start to move towards doing that, but do want to get feedback on that design, and I'll show you guys that later in the call. I'm working with Sergey. He's submitted a pull request, which is really cool. It's going to be really cool, and we're working through exactly how that's going to shape up. But the idea is going to be you'll have the ability to sort of essentially do like a PNP dot configure, for lack of a better term. We're still sort of figuring out the shape of it, but you'll be able to configure sort of on a per chain basis, a base URL, and all the headers and all those things that you sort of can now configure using like PNP.setup. So it'll be sort of a more isolated PNP.setup that won't necessarily be global. And this actually, it's going to be really cool. I think it's going to open up a couple of interesting scenarios. And it actually, I think there was a question a while back, and I apologize, I forget the gentleman's name. I want to say it was Mike or Matthew, but had a great question around sort of multi-tenant support and how to do that more easily. So I think this might open up that as well. So that's going to be really cool. That's in the works, and he and I are working through that. If anybody else would like to take a look and has some ideas and feedback, certainly welcome that. But that will definitely be part of the next release. And then I want to also add, in terms of the SharePoint side of things, so set graph aside for a second, the SharePoint side of things, as far as I'm concerned, things are fairly feature complete and stable at this point. So if you have ideas or you have things you feel are missing, please let us know. We're happy to look at incorporating them. I can't promise a timeline necessarily, but definitely if you have things that are like, man, this would make my life so much easier if, that's the kind of thing we'd like to hear about, and that's the kind of thing we'd love to incorporate into the library, because we're all about making developers' lives easier. So do just let us know. A couple of links down at the bottom, again, to the SPPNP community, and as well we have the Gitter channel, and that's on this slide because that Gitter channel is specific to the JavaScript core library, but that's a great place to also ask quick questions and reach out to folks, if you're stuck or just aren't sure how to do a certain thing. And then I did want to mention we've had some amazing growth over the last 2 months. So some of you might remember when I showed, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, I was really excited in April. We had 19 million requests go through the JavaScript core library. And I was really excited about that. And I'm even more excited to see in May we had 185 million requests. And already in June, we've had 386 million requests. So that was probably through a few days ago in June. So phenomenal growth. And I've got to say, it's all up to you guys in the community who are using this in your projects, talking to your customers about it, and incorporating it into your work. So I just big thank you for me. On a very personal level, I'll just say it's really cool to kind of see this kind of growth for something I and all of us have worked on together. And it's probably the piece of software in my entire software writing life that's gotten the most usage. We've all had those projects that just get thrown away, so it's really cool to see something we've all built together get used so highly. And then you'll see down here on the bottom, that graph is the NPM downloads for the package by month. So you can see that has also ramped up really impressively. And again, that's a tribute to all of you using this in your projects and evangelizing it out there in the world. So thank you for myself, the whole PNP core team, and it's a congratulations to everyone in the community that's made this work possible. So great work, really everybody. This is something for all of us, I think, to be proud of, quite frankly. And then the graph on the right, you'll see Norway, by requests, is now the #1 country for the JavaScript core library. So I won't name the tenant, but there's one tenant that has some really amazing usage numbers. When we first saw them in May, I wasn't sure they were accurate. So if any of you worked on that customer, I'd love to hear from you, to hear what happened in that project and what you guys did, because I'd love to hear that story and maybe tell that story a little more broadly if everybody involved is okay with that. So I'll just kind of put that out there. But anyway, so then you see United States, but we needed 500 and some tenants as opposed to Australia that had 90 in third. But really great, and it's awesome to see the worldwide usage. And again, just thank you to all of you in the community for making this growth possible and making this something that's valuable to all of us. And like I said, keep that feedback coming so we can make it more valuable and continue seeing the utility of this code. And so with that, I'll hand things over to Vesa for a quick SharePoint framework update.
Let me unmute myself and take over the presentation as well. So, and hopefully the audio is fine. The quality seems not optimal, but hopefully you guys can hear me fine.
Yep,
so good. Let's talk about SharePoint. Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. So a few things. SharePoint framework. Obviously, we talked about the SharePoint framework extension last time in 2 weeks ago as well. It's still a relatively new thing that it's in preview, but it's now available in preview in dev tenants. And I'm going to talk about what it actually means in the following slide as well. But if you go to the AKMS SPFx extensions, you'll find started tutorials. There's a 4 series of creating an application customizer, which is equals to user custom action. And then there's the 2 separate tutorials on a field customizer and a command set customizer. So you will then understand what you can actually do right now in the dev preview if you follow up on the tutorials. And the code is also available as well. We do also have already quite a significant amount of community samples on SharePoint framework extensions, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, I forgot to put a slide on that one, but let me actually paste in that URLs. If you're just looking into testing something related on those extensions, you can easily find reusable samples from the following locations. I'm going to paste in that one there, where we have the tutorial code and also community samples, and we're adding their samples from engineering pretty soon as well. Now, let me be some discussions around what does the SharePoint framework extension preview actually means, and let's try to clarify the situation on this one as well. So, SharePoint extension preview means that it's now available in the developer tenants. It doesn't mean the same as developer site collection. So you need to have a developer tenant to be able to test this. You can subscribe to or get a new developer tenant by signing up to Office 365 developer program, and the URL is in the window. That's free. You just need an email, and that's it. And after that, you will get a free developer tenant where you can actually play around with these things. At a certain point, we'll availability of SharePoint framework extension previews, the first release, but it's not ready for production usage for time being. And the reason for that one is quite simple. We're waiting for the feedback. We're adjusting the APIs, we're adjusting the interfaces and capabilities as well. And at this point, maybe we should have more clarity and maybe a separate video where we're explaining why does it take so long to get all of this stuff out? Well, actually, it doesn't. The reason why we need to take some time is to make sure that the APIs and interfaces are good enough and your feedback has been addressed. And then when we get them out, we can no longer change those APIs because we can break you in the future. So when we're doing software development into engineering, we just can't go and adjust our interfaces and APIs in the matter of days or weeks, because that would actually break you and your customizations. And that's why it does take slightly longer than, let's say, a standard random custom delivery of customizations in SharePoint. So We're looking into getting the extensions to GA summer, early autumn. There's an Ignite conference coming. Obviously, that's a big announcement timing as well. It might be that it's GA'd before. It might be that it's GAing in Ignite. We don't actually know. It depends on the feedback what we're getting. So there's no ETA at the moment for the SharePoint Framework extensions. We would like to have your feedback. So github.com/SharePoint/SPDevDocs/issues is our issue list for reporting bugs and also discussions. Hey, I would like to have the following. Can I do that? And if that capability is not available, we'll request you to submit a user voice entry as an example. So we're able to track all of the requests in an official manner. The reason why we use GitHub, the GitHub is for bugs and discussions, and then user voices to get your additional or new feature request in our official process. Because quite simply, sending an email to me doesn't mean that it's actually getting into the queue of getting something done in the SharePoint framework. So we need to use official processes because otherwise we can't follow up on all of these requests. Good. Maybe that's a good summary on that one. A few things what I wanted to quickly update. So this one is a relatively new series on the SharePoint framework. So we did a recording of 5 videos together with Waldek around PMP. Well, the video series is called PMP Sorts, but these are essentially 4 to 10 minutes videos which are showing specific, let's say, scenarios in SharePoint framework. As an example, today I announced this one in Twitter as well. So there's a new video which is showing what does it mean when you need to update a SharePoint framework solution, because there has been apparently quite a lot of confusion. What do I actually need to do to get a updated JavaScript reflected on all of the instances of my client-side web part? So now there's a video recording which is explaining and providing that insights, and it's also explaining how to double check those things and all of that. So that came, actually I recorded that this morning and it's live in the YouTube already. So these are essentially the SharePoint PMP shorts majority of them probably in the future will be also in SharePoint framework, but they're really meant to be explicitly concentrating on a specific scenario and showing you how it can be done. So you don't have to listen us to wonder and chit chat on random topics like we do in the special interest groups or every now and then in the webcasts as well. Now, actually, let's move on. So a few things before I do a quick demo on the custom dialogues, which is one of the things which is in the dev preview, starting from the latest packages. I wanted to kind of quickly share what are we doing in SharePoint engineering. So what are we currently working on? Obviously, we are working on a SharePoint framework extension. So targeting that GA is the next release. Well, there will be subsequent dev preview releases before we actually do a GA release. We're looking into having automatic solution deployment. This is a classic request on a SharePoint framework. Currently, the only way you can get a client-side web part available in a site is the SharePoint framework solution using the add an app capability within the site level. And we do absolutely acknowledge that that's not an optimal situation, because in certain scenarios, you want to make sure that your web part is available across the tenant easily. So we need to come up with an alternative process for that. And that's coming up relatively soon. You'll see an announcement on that one in weeks rather than months, let's put it that way. We're looking into also having a site collection app catalog, which essentially means that if a tenant admin approves, you're able to have an application, a site collections catalog for certain site collections, so that the site collection owners in those site collections can deploy add-ins or SharePoint framework solutions without going to the tenant level app catalog. So that will provide some flexibility on things. We're working on the on-premises support. So SharePoint 2016 feature pack 2 will have the SharePoint framework available in the on-premises. And on that one, there was a random discussions in social media and in the blogosphere. If everybody is is if somebody is still using the blogosphere term. Just to be clear on that one, so there's a nice blog from AC, Andrew Connells. He had been digging on the SharePoint framework human templates, and then kind of got scared that, oh, what does it mean? Why there's a selection or a question around, are you targeting on-premises or SharePoint Online? So just to be clear on that one, whenever you create a client-side web part in the future, in the on-premises or in SharePoint Online, it will work in both sites. The difference is, however, that in SharePoint Online, we are releasing additional component types, like extensions or field customizer or application customizer, much faster. So that selection in the Yeoman templates will just filter down the next question, that what kind of component you're actually about to create. So for example, right now we promised, and let's be clear on this one as well, we promised to deliver client-side web parts in SharePoint Framework for Feature Pack 2. We haven't promised to deliver all of the Feature Framework because that's pretty much impossible. So what you will see in the Feature Pack 2 is the client-side web parts, but you won't see extensions. So when you're then running the Yeoman template, whenever we push out those updates available, it will ask you that are you targeting on-premises or online, and if you choose on-premises, then you are creating a client-side web part. If you're choosing SharePoint Online, you're still able to create an extension or a client-side web part. So hopefully that clarifies that situation on that one. We're looking into or working on a graph HTTP client. This is the one which you're able to access Microsoft Graph without ADL.js and all of the additional logins. And that documentation is on my table, and I do apologize on small delays on that one. It's coming pretty soon in the documentation section as well. And then we're working on a dialog control, which is in dev preview as well. And what I was planning to do is quickly show what does the dialog control actually means. In our SharePoint Framework extension tutorials, we're doing a super simplistic dialog scenario, but I'm going to release an updated tutorial on that one, which will show how to do a custom dialog completely. And that's pretty much what I was planning to do as a quick demo. So let me jump on that one right away. I'll get back on the questions in the iron window whenever we move into the Velin's demo. But let me share my screen, and please confirm when the screen is visible. So let's start actually that one. Loading. So Patrick, confirm whenever you get it, it's crossed the pond.
I got it.
Excellent. So so this is a quick, or let's say simplistic demo on the custom dialogues. And I just wanted to preview the tutorial outcome, which is going to be available within a matter of days. Maybe today, maybe on Monday, Tuesday, but it will be in the devdevelopers.com. And you're able to then adapt and learn how these things can be done. So this is my developer tenant. And what I've done here in my environment, where I created a custom command set or list view command set, which has one command, which is command 1, and that is actually opening up a dialog. So if you have done the extension tutorials, this is kind of a similar kind of a setup, but the difference is that we are creating a custom dialog completely. So we're taking over the rendering of the dialog. And in my actual dialog command base class or the implementation, we're then showing the dialog, and also what's important, we are also returning a value from the dialog back. Now, let's have a look on how does it look in practice. In this case, this is an imaginary scenario, but let's have a look on how does it actually work. So let me go to my command line. I'm just double checking that it's running, so I can actually show a live demo. Let me go back on my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to copy the debug path and debug URL from here, which is in the samples, and all of the extension samples should have this one included, so you can easily test these things in the dev tenant. And now I want to test against live data and live site, my extensions. So I'm going to do that debugging query parameter as an extension to the URL and clicking enter. And this means that my customization is getting loaded from my local host, so I don't have to actually deploy anything on SharePoint Online to be able to debug and test the stuff. So load debug scripts, there we go. We can see that there's a new open dialog button available in the button bar, and I can't remember if we added in here as well. No, we didn't. But you can absolutely add a button here as well, or a menu item in the context menu. So in this case, this one is a relatively simple scenario, but I'm able to open up a dialog, and then you are able to control what do we actually show within the dialog. So in this case, we're just showing a scenario where we're overriding the dialog completely and writing or drawing or render a color picker as part of the dialog. Well, it doesn't actually make any sense to have a color picker in the list, but it shows a scenario how it can be done. And now I can actually pick a color and choose whatever it is and adjust slightly the transparency, or let's put it there and click OK, and we're getting actually the return value back on the extension. So let's quickly have a look on, I'm not going to spend too much time on the actual implementation. I'll show you how simple this one is. So quickly showing what it actually means. So here's my command set implementation inherited from the base class, which is the list view command set. Only thing what I need to do is override or implement on execute for command 1, because I had a one command, and command 1 was matching on the manifest JSON commands, which I'm actually defining in here. And in here, we are then creating an instance of our picker dialog and providing an attribute or values to that one as well. And then we do dialog.show, and whenever the dialog.show is getting closed or taken care of, we actually have a result value coming back from the dialog as well. So we're able to kind of bypass values to the dialog based on the selection, for example, based on the row which has been selected in the item, or the values from the items which have been selected. And the actual dialog in this case, this is a React-based implementation. It is taking care of advantage of Office UI Fabric React, and the implementation is relatively simple. So let me scroll down here. It extends the base dialog, which is coming from SharePoint Framework. There's the result return value. My actual render, because it's a React component, it's super simple. We're just rendering a color picker dialog content component, which is actually defined in upper section in here. And in this component, we're just essentially rendering some components or controls React and providing additional properties for them. So we're taking advantage of the Office UI Fabric controls, React controls, so we don't actually need to worry about the UI rendering within our customization, which is pretty cool. And that's really the key value of the Office UI Fabric React controls or components as well. It's just a matter of me designing what parameters I'm actually passing into those controls, and they will then start behaving slightly differently. So there's the dialog content color picker. There's the color picker, which is actually coming from the React components as well. There's the dialog footer, which is actually coming from SharePoint Framework. That's an Office Office UI Fabric button. That's a primary button, and that's it. We're rendering the content. And let's actually have a look on that one more time. So there's my dialog. I can click that one. The elements and the rendering is looking consistent with Office 365 because everything is using the Office UI Fabric React components in general. And I can pick a color, click OK. I'm getting that return value back. I can work on that value if needed within my code again. So relatively simplistic scenario, but it shows the how to use a custom and how to build a custom dialog. And you can absolutely do this without React. You can absolutely implement this using AngularJS if needed, Knockout, whatever is your preference from a usage perspective. And obviously, you can use this dialog in the context of web parts, in the context of whatever. So it's not limited on the command sets or extensions. So, but right now it's still in dev preview, so it's not really meant to be used in production. We're collecting feedback from you guys before we're releasing this one. Good. I think that's it from my side. So I'm going to go back on the Ion window and have a look on those. But I think, Velin, you're the next one on queue for the demo on the SharePoint Framework solution.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'll try to share my screen.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to stop sharing and let's see if we can.
Present now. Okay. Good. Just let me know when you see my screen. So my name is Velin Georgiev, and I'm a SharePoint developer. Today we will talk about provisioning SharePoint assets within SPFx SharePoint Framework solution package.
Yep, and we cut the screen.
Yep. Okay, great. So I've uploaded this sample last week, I think, but I know that we already have one sample there that Ves uploaded, and it shows a provisioning list along with the solution package. But I wanted to go beyond that custom list and then put additional stuff within the elements file, so you can see that you can deploy much more stuff here. And I'll quickly go through the demo so you can get the idea what we have there. And I already packaged my solution and uploaded the solution to the app catalog. So I'll have it available here, and I'll just try to add it as an application to a site. I'll just say site contents, add application. And then I'll select my solution, client-side solution. What I did, add an app. And I'll just select my solution. It is that one, React Provision Assets. So once it's installed, it will install my webpath, but along with my webpath, it will install some additional stuff here. And because this might take some time, I already pre-installed this here. So we'll get here at the end and see whether just these things are installed. And here I already installed it. So you can see that my provision assets is here, but along with the assets, I've provisioned this custom list, this custom document library. If we go in the list, you'll see a test data here as well. And if we go into the document library, you'll see image folder, another image within the folder. Even if we go to the site pages, this is uploaded from the solution package. This is a site page, and if I click on the site page, I'm getting my webpath from the package as well. We also have created web properties here, but if I have some time, I can try to show you the back properties as well. That's pretty much, and now we'll go to the code. Now, from the webpath perspective, nothing interesting here. This is a boilerplate, blank React webpath. I haven't done anything within the code here. The most interesting part is here. So within our assets folder, we have that elements file. And as you can see, we have image 1, image 2, two schemas, one for the custom library, one for the list that we're going to deploy, and the site page itself. If I open the site page, you even see the webpath here. Let me just, what about that? This is just a site page that I've downloaded from the site page library, and I slightly modified so my custom webpath, the one that I have down below, is also displayed within the site page. But whenever you do such a things, if someone requires you to deploy a site page with the webpath directly provision it, make sure that you download the latest site page that's on the SharePoint tenant, because they might change this. Don't use just the page from the sample. You might have additional controls here. So Most of the code is here within the elements file, and then how we provision those. This all gets packaged within the solution, but how we tell the SharePoint to deploy all these stuff. Now, at the top, I've just created one comment here, and these elements, if somebody is not familiar with the elements, this is part of the classic SharePoint feature framework, and we have this from like SharePoint 2007. I don't know, Vesa maybe knows better than me, but it's there from a long time ago. So with these elements, we can provision different components for a SharePoint side, and I've stated the one that we currently can deploy with SharePoint Framework Solution Package. And here down below, I have something that's called module, and with this module node, I can upload files. And as you can see, this module has an URL that means that we'll upload that file to the site pages. And we'll grab that file. This is the page that I have over here on the left. And I'll upload it into the site pages on that URL. That's the virtual URL within the site pages. Another thing is the site column, but the site column is already covered by the simplified scenario from Vesa. I've just tried to put much more properties here, so you can see that you can specify more properties in player one and pre-configure a site column. And this is site column from type node. Another site column or field, that's from type URL that will later assign to the content type. Now we have one content type for the list, the custom list that we're going to deploy. And as you can see, it inherits from the item. So, and these are our custom fields here placed into the content type. And another content type for the document library that inherits from the document content type. And again, the very same fields placed into the content type. These are all custom. Something that might be useful is also you can specify your own Word document template, for example, with a form inside, and then use it as a default template. And whenever you hit new button on the document library, it's going to open your Word document, for example. Then we have a list instance over here that's going to create our custom list. And the custom list has its own list schema. If we open the list schema XML, this is a traditional list schema XML, nothing fancy here. You have view within the list, pretty much the same from Vesa's sample, my content type here, and some more properties that can be handy from time to time. For example, you can enable versioning directly from this XML definition and specify major versions limit or stuff like that. If we go back to the elements, we'll see, I'll go through the data a bit later, but we'll see another instance that will deploy our document library on that URL. And whenever the document library is available, it will upload 2 images to the document library. As you can see, there is another module that points to the URL of the document library, and then within the document library, we will upload our image at that URL. That means that this image will go into the root folder of the document library, and another image that is going to go into a custom file folder. This is how you can specify a virtual path. So it will create a folder for you and place the image. Another interesting property here, replace content. So be careful if this is set to true. Whenever you have image with that name on the document library, this will be overwritten. And the last two here, we have a property back. You can set up property back properties. So you can specify such on a web level or on a list level. I've just put two samples. The first one will specify properties on the web level. This might be handy for your app whenever you have settings, for example, and you need to put the settings somewhere. But they need to be visible outside of a list, for example. But if you have list-specific properties, you can create a properties in the property back of the list. And this is my custom list here, and I'm setting custom properties in the property back of the list. So as you can see, multiple components deployed at once with your SharePoint Framework web part. Another interesting thing might be the test data that I've put here. As you can see, with the list instance, we can specify data, and this data will be displayed here. If we open that one, we'll see the data. But this should not be done, I guess, in production. There should be another mechanism that you have to use to provision data. I would suggest that for development purposes you could do it, but because this is a part of the feature framework, and along with your app, you're getting a feature. If you deinstall and uninstall and then install the feature again, this data will be doubled there. So you'll have the duplicate. So it is just there to show you that you can do stuff like this, but you can create separate rows in the list. And this is the field that you're going to populate, and then this is the value. Another interesting thing within the Elements XML is using the special tokens. As you can see, we have that one side, and on the front, I don't know how to call this in English, but you can see this is a specific token, and I've specified links here. If you go on the link, if you follow that link, you can see different special tokens that you can use, and they can be also handy. Say, for example, this is the URL of the current website. Good. I'll go back to my cheat sheet here. And I'll say, okay, these assets should be specified into the config file of the solution. You should go here, and you have the Elements XML file here, but also you should specify all the files that you're going to upload to the SharePoint so they can be zipped within the package. If you miss the image, for example, it's not going to be packaged. So bear in mind. And how we can troubleshoot this. For example, if you work on that XML file and then for some reason you mess up that node here, and that node here looks like list instance 1, 2, 3. This will fail when you try to install the application, and it will fail like that. It will say, sorry, something went wrong, blah, blah, blah. And at that point, I don't know what went wrong within my solution package. So one of the things that you can do, and the only one that I know, is you can go on the details here from site contents, your application here, details. And within the details, if you have enough permissions, that means that you should be, I think that, I don't know the current permissions, but if you're a site collection administrator, you should be able to see it for sure. You can get here to install errors and try to see what's the type of the error, what happened, and then try to troubleshoot what went wrong within the this XML provisioning file. So I can say copy paste, and as you can see, it's some more details there. But if you go, for example, here you'll see as an invalid child element of list instance 1 to 3, and sometimes even tries to give you a bit more details. So it's a way to troubleshoot these elements files. Now, when this is useful, in many of the cases, you you would prefer to do some scripting or using the provisioning engine to provision your additional assets. But if you'd like a fully encapsulated application, so everything in one package, without additional scripting or additional provisioning scripts or whatever you decide to develop, this comes handy. So you can just package 2 web paths, lists, or whatever is there, and then just deploy it like that. And whenever someone says add an application, that would be enough to deploy the whole package. I find it very handy for some small scenarios. If you're about to provision the whole architecture with site collections and whatever, this is not part of the package, one SharePoint framework package at all. So it's up to how you define your strategy around provisioning. But yes, it can be handy sometimes. I think that I'm done. That's from my side. So Patrick or Vesa, you can
Thank you, Belin.
you.
Yeah, and that's a great, even that, well, there was the simplistic scenario, like you mentioned, as part of the we did in Spring, but this is a good example of a kind of a showing all of the different capabilities, but what are available in the feature framework related on SharePoint SharePoint framework solutions. So one thing what I wanted to quickly pinpoint, just to be super clear, the engine what we used within the SharePoint framework related on feature framework is exactly the same. So when we're activating the SharePoint framework solution within Assign, it is the same engine as it is for farm solutions or add-ins if there are provisioning assets. So the capabilities are exactly the same, except there's only a subset of elements which are supported. So the subset of elements are field content type list, custom action, and I think that's it. List template isn't there because that would be a horrible thing. But it's documented in the devdevelops.com/SharePoint what are the elements which are supported. So obviously you can't do all of the things which are available in feature framework. But thank you, Belin. Great demo.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Outstanding. And so now I want to do a quick sort of demo. And I said this is a very early look at some of the graph work I've been doing, but wanted to get this out in front of the community to get feedback before, like I said, it gets built out, which then makes it much harder to change the overall shape of things. So this only exists on my computer, so right now this isn't really available for anybody to test yet, and there isn't much to test yet. But where things are at right now is we've started out with, so you might be familiar with, if you look in the SharePoint source, there's a SP REST class that wraps up all the methods that get exposed then out to the world. And so I've kind of followed that same thing here for Graph. And this is my first kind of, I'm not sure what my favorite way of approaching this is, but so Graph has that part of the URL that is the version. Right now it's version 1.0 or v1.0 is out there. So I'm exposing a v1 property, and then that v1 property, if we go to that. And so this very much follows, if you've ever looked at the JavaScript core library source code, it's almost exactly the same kind of style at this point, but with I haven't built out any of the methods and any of that yet, right? So let's get the basic shape of it, and then it's easy to sort of build out the methods. So we've got groups, which happens to be one of the things we can query through the graph client in SharePoint, the HTTP graph client. So we've got groups, and you can see, again, we can just chain these objects. I think that's, for me, a very fundamental part of kind of the Fluent APIs, the ability to just chain these objects together. So we go v1 to groups, and then if we look at groups is, again, I don't have any of the properties or any methods coded out, but it gives you this graph queryable collection. And if we have a peek at the graph queryable, those of you playing along at home will notice this is pretty much the exact same class as the queryable, which is used for the SharePoint work, but cleverly renamed graph queryable. And so everything's kind of just renamed graph queryable at this point, with a lot of the SharePoint specific stuff stripped out. So again, like I said, very early days. This will probably need to change, the string parsing, for when people want to pass in a string URL directly to some of these classes. But a lot of this, I mean, it makes sense to leave the rewriting the alias parameters stuff. We can leave in there. Some of this get parent will probably be the same, clone and so forth. But what I wanted to get down here to is get, and you can see a lot of the other stuff is missing. So there's no post, put, or delete, or any of that stuff. I've got get right now. And you're going to see I'm creating a new client, which is a graph HTTP client. And then I'm calling client.get, and I'm saying passing it the URL and passing the options. This will likely change as well. I think it makes sense to build up a request pipeline in the same way we're doing for SharePoint. But for now, like I said, this is very early days. Just kind of wanted to see will we be able to build a query and run it. Now this, just to be a little more confusing, this graph HTTP client is not the SharePoint framework one. It's actually this graph HTTP client, which again is mostly commented out, but our implementation in this point at this time. So the idea, if you've looked at the source code for the SharePoint side of things, the implementation is pluggable. Right now, what I'm doing is grabbing our runtime configuration and the SharePoint context, which we're providing to the library, and I'm grabbing the graph HTTP client directly from SharePoint framework, and then I'm calling its fetch method with the URL and options. Like I said, we'll likely need to rebuild or build around this, some retry logic and things like that. But again, very early days. So how does this get used? So let me pull over this, which is a nice Hello World web part. And one of the things you can do, if you weren't aware, is you can actually npm install from local files. So I've npm installed my current version of the JavaScript core library sitting on my machine into my Hello World web part. And this is a straight boilerplate. I created a Hello World web part using the Yo generator, and that's what I have here. Until we look at the actual Hello Web part file. So I've done the on init setup. So any of you who've looked at the wiki or done the SharePoint framework have seen this snippet of code before. So I'm calling setup, and I'm just providing the SharePoint framework context to the JavaScript core library. And this lets us set up all of our SharePoint framework related things. For the SharePoint world, that means being able to set the base URL correctly for our queries. And for graph, it means getting to grab that graph client from SharePoint framework. And so now we've got a little code snippet here that is so pnp.graph. And this is another place I'd like a little bit of feedback from folks, is right now the structure is pnpgraph.v1.groups.get, etc. But then, after that, it remains very much the same. And we would do, we're not doing any parsing, so this is going to be the raw response from the graph client at this point, but we would end up doing some parsing just as we do for SharePoint responses to make things easier. But you will get the, oops, it's not O, it's PNP. So now you've got your graph. So one of the, like I said, feedback places is right now it's v1.groups. I could see it being groups.stuff, but we need a way to swap out the versions. So is that something we want to inline like this, or is that something we want as part of a configuration? Is that something we want to do pnp.graph? And I'm passing a string, that could be an object or a configuration object or whatever, dot groups would be another style to do it. So, it's something we could do in the setup method. You could specify a graph version, something like that. So, anyway, not something we have to decide right this second, but something I am looking for feedback on from the community, what would be easiest or what makes the most sense as we move forward, because I think it also makes sense to, as possible, expose the beta things. So it'd be something like pnp.graph.beta instead of v1 dot other things, right? So you'll be able to do more things in beta or do different things in beta as well. So I think several different approaches to that problem, but I think it's just one of those we all need to kind of come together and make a decision as a community as what we'd like to see there. But really what we want to see is this actually do something. So I've got the gulp serve running for this project already, and if I go, I'm just going to refresh this because this is probably pretty stale at this point. So this is my workbench in my SharePoint Online site. So this is not the local workbench. The Graph client obviously doesn't really work locally, but then I've got my little Hello World web part. We've added it to the page, and like I said, I was just writing it to the console. So you'll see here we've gotten back our group. So I've got a little group called Family. So super basic example, but I think it shows kind of a path forward, and it's we've talked for a few months now about Graph and how we're going to sort of start to support that, and so I wanted to share this with you, and kind of the path forward I see is making use of initially, oops, sorry, wrong window, making use initially of the Graph HTTP client, and so we will take on the limitations that it has. We'll only be able to query the things it can query and do the things it can do inside SharePoint Framework at first, with the idea that would let us build out the API, get a feel for the shape of it, start to make sure things are working well. And then as we progress further, obviously we want to make sure we can figure out a way to support querying Graph in Node, querying Graph outside of SharePoint Framework, but we don't have necessarily great answers for that right this second. So I wanted to, but not put this work off until we had perfect answers for all those things. So using the Graph client kind of and wrapping that and passing our queries just sort of into that directly, I think gives us a really nice way to get started, build things out, start to get a feel for it. And then once we have other ways to do authentication, get the tokens and such that we need, we can wrap that in. So again, very early days, but did want to share this because it's something we've been talking about, and kind of solicit feedback, honestly, because it's early enough that we can get that feedback and then make the changes and things before we've really written out a ton of code, and then we have to change it, and we all know the fun of trying to change a giant code base. So trying to avoid that, but also trying to end up with the best ultimate result for everybody in the community. So going through, we don't have much time for the open discussion, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. We have some great stuff in the IM window as always, so thank you. If you have questions, hit up the Gitter channel or the SharePoint Tech community or Twitter or the issues list for any of the libraries. If you have comments on the Graph stuff I just showed, definitely welcome those. There is actually already an issue in the issues list for the JavaScript core library. That would be a great place to drop your thoughts about what I just showed, as well as any feedback and ideas on how to kind of grow that. And then once we kind of get the core stuff together, we can open that up so folks can really start to add stuff, and we can get the community contributions to help build that out. So our next meeting will be July 6th. As I said, we need to get the invite updated for the new fiscal year, the new Microsoft fiscal year. So we will be doing that, and we'll tweet out when the invite is updated. It will be the same link that it currently is. So if you have that link, or it's the same link that's on the patterns and practices dev.office.com/patterns and practices, or patterns-and-practices, I think, page, that link will still work. That link will still get you the right invite. So look forward to seeing everybody in July. And I think that's all from me. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you, Velen, for an amazing demo. Really cool to see the new provisioning stuff in action. And then Vesa, thank you, of course, always for the great SharePoint framework updates. Always look forward to that. And again, want to remind folks, if you're doing some cool work, let us know and sign up for a demo on this call. We would love to show off your work, and I think everybody in the community can learn from and benefit from each other in that way. So thanks all. Have a great rest of your week, and talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.